Alright, so I'm going to try this again. I've been having issues with this mic. And I could do it without the mic. I'm using my phone for this because I'm getting loaded. And but it's a little clearer, but it's not as loud. So in a sense, I think I'm going to go with the way it sounds right now, because it will still be louder. So, I think you'll understand what I'm saying. So I don't think it should be so grainy. And I got to get a new mic. Really, that's what I got to get. So, my opinions on the Jake Paul Ben Askren fight. So those who don't know, Jake Paul is an amateur boxer, if you want to call him that. I mean, we're talking 2 years of training, and I think 2 years. And he's done a couple of fights against people who aren't really boxers. One was a basketball player, and I think one was a boxer, but we're talking really amateur stuff. And then he's somehow called out Ben Askren, and I don't know the details of how this happened, because I'm not concerned with, like, all of the social stuff surrounding these kinds of things. And Ben Askren is a very high-level wrestling competitor, and was a champion UFC fighter. When I mean very high level, when we were talking about the highest, pretty much. I don't know if he was Olympic. You know what? I think he was. I don't know if he won. I don't care. Okay, I know a little bit of the background. Like I said, I don't care about all the other stuff. Okay, I don't follow the UFC all that much. Okay, I mean, it's kind of a recent thing for me. I got turned off from the UFC a long time ago when I was a kid, and I'm kind of enjoying some of it now. So, long story short, I believe it's going to be Ben Askren. Okay. Now, on one hand, I think it's as simple as he's the better top-level athlete, but it's also not that simple. Like, it has to boil down to that. Now, I've looked into some of the recent trainings, and I've seen some of the fight clips of Jake Paul. He's got pretty good skills for a normal guy that boxes. Okay? Someone like myself would be like, all right, that's a decently tough guy. He's a jerk. Wouldn't be my friend. But, he can throw down. But, I mean, can he throw down at the level that Ben Askren has had to throw down to? Okay? There's a difference. Now, Ben Askren is not a boxer. So let's look at Jake Paul for a minute. One of the things that, audio-only listeners won't understand this, but my video just crazy. Okay. So, let's look at Jake Paul for a minute. Now, his training stuff looks okay in regards to the syllabus of movement that is boxing. So you see someone fighting against an unskilled fighter, or you see them on pads, you really can't tell that well how good they are. You can't. Because what really matters in boxing, like, don't get me wrong, it's good to see good form. It's good to see good snappy punches and athletic ability and timing. So far as you can tell, the timing seems okay in a pre-programmed kind of sense, on the mitts. Everyone can look good in the mitts. In like 2 days, I can make you look like pretty good. A couple hours a day for like 3 days, I can make you look good. Okay, and I'm not amazing at boxing. Okay. But, do they understand the chess game? Do they understand position? Inside the pocket, outside the pocket? Do they understand the angles? The angles, man. I'm going to tell you one angle, okay? I'm squared off, shoulders to shoulders, squared off to you. You can punch me, I can punch you. I got long arms, maybe if I stay back, maybe you can't really get me and I can still get you. Okay, maybe. But you could get into the pocket. So a forward shuffle could get you into the pocket if you're a little fast with that. And then I'm having a harder time. So I have to go into the clinch. And then the ref breaks us up under the Queensberry rules. We're only going to do so much there, you know. So if I go off to an angle, a shuffle just to the left or the right, I'd probably try to my right, your left, assuming you're not southpaw, right? And the only thing that really matters is if you're southpaw, is if whatever your lead is. I'm going to try to get to one side. I'm going to try to get to that side. So if I'm on your left at a 45-degree angle, and I'm in the range for my punches, in a boxing match, I'm hitting you with anything I want. And you maybe can get me with a jab. Now in an MMA fight, that same exact position, maybe you can get me with a lead kick. Maybe you can get a knee up there. Maybe you can get a jab, okay? But those aren't going to do damage. And as long as I stay in that angle, you're not doing anything. Anything you do will be in order to get me out of that angle. So it's not to say you're completely defenseless, okay? But it is saying, so it's not to say you're completely defenseless, but everything you're doing is only to get you out of there. You're not, generally speaking, knocking me out or doing any significant damage. I mean, if you're a 1 in a million puncher like Deontay Wilder, fine. But the fact of the matter is, you know, we're not talking about Deontay Wilder, are we? You know, the fact of the matter is I could still hit you with my prime punches, my better tools. I could take you down if it's an MMA fight. I can get in for a single leg. I can go in. I can do an arm drag to a Russian. I can do lots of things. It's that same position, that same angle. And then there's another part of boxing that's about any fighting that is, you know, about kind of loading up their nervous system, kind of programming your opponent to be afraid of something that you're doing and make them react accordingly. You know, I could jab and I can deliver some jabs enough to make you afraid of the jab, and then once I get you slipping and slipping and slipping, and you, next thing you know, you could slip right into my hook. It's called the rope-a-dope. So there's a psychological part. Jake Paul seems to be fairly good at the movements, and he's talking a lot about the art of boxing. What are you talking about, man? There's an art to everything. Boxing is an art. Okay, so is everything else. You know, he's talking about head movement. So, like, he's talking about the art of boxing, but he only mentions the head movement. You know, I can't rely on how he looks on the mitts because that's not really a good example of his skills. I can't rely on how he looked fighting guys who don't know how to fight, like Ben Askren does. So that's not an applicable measurement of his skills. So I have to go off of some of the things he's saying. And he says a lot. He runs his mouth a lot. Something I don't like about the guy. He is talking about the art of boxing, but he's not saying anything about the art of boxing. You get what I'm saying? He's only talking about head movement. And head movement is something you use maybe as a head fake, but mostly as a last minute because someone got into a better position than you and you had to move your head in order to avoid their punches and do something to get out of that position. It's kind of not, it's a fundamental skill, but it's kind of not ideal. Look at Joe Louis. Did he have the best head movement? No. He understood his position. Look at his hips and his shoulders versus his opponent's hips and shoulders. When people talk about footwork, they think about fancy foot movements. No. Footwork is you using your feet, your positioning your feet to move your body into what angles you need to be. I never understood this. I should have understood this listening to my grandfather talk about boxing and teach me boxing. I should have understood that then. He said it. I didn't get it. I should have understood it training at Master Toddy's for a couple months. Okay? Or bouncing around from this martial art to that martial art everywhere I was working or whatever. Okay? I should have understood it from sparring Hapkido guys in Hurricane, Utah and stuff because I was working out there. Like, I bounced around trying to learn martial arts wherever I was working as a teenager. So I should have come across this idea, but I didn't. People said it, but I didn't understand. Not until I started practicing jiu-jitsu at our academy. Our academy does do a lot of wrestling. And it was like a light bulb. Boom. These are the same positions that everyone talked about. These are the same positions. In order to get in for a takedown or a Russian or an arm drag to a Russian or take their back and take them down that way. You got to understand the same angles and the same mental tactics. That is the art of boxing. So the things that really matter, these high-level wrestlers have a better understanding than most boxers, even decent boxers. But certainly a better understanding than a guy who's been doing it 2 years. I also would say that several years in MMA would give you probably more legitimate boxing training than 2 years focusing on boxing. I know that sounds nuts, but it's like, no, I mean, really good boxers work with MMA guys all the time. And again, your form is important, okay? But your form can be pretty bad if your position and your tactics are really good. And I have way more faith that Ben Askren's going to have an understanding of those positions and tactics than Jake Paul. You know, it's not like we're talking about him going against Mayweather or something. Okay? You know, another thing is that, Ben Askren's had to do this under pressure. A lot more pressure than Jake Paul. And that matters, okay, guys? I am not a competitive person. I'll tell you a little bit of my story. I'm not a competitive person. I did a couple of really small, like, youth kind of boxing things, and it was really just to get used to getting hit. You know, my grandpa was trying to teach me how to protect myself. I did so effectively, and did it in a healthy way. Okay. So I never really had a competitive bone in my body. I did a couple things, but it was really just for the sake of doing it. I go into jiu-jitsu a couple years ago. I've done 2 tournaments, and I got my ass handed to me. I'm way better in the gym. I roll way better. I've been doing martial arts most of my life. I'm trained in executive protection. I've worked for bail bondsmen. I've helped arrest people, okay? I've been in bar fights. Those don't count because anyone getting in a bar fight is probably not a legitimate martial artist. You usually just kind of stay out of their way, then they get tired, and it's like, oh, okay, you don't know how to fight. All right, so, I mean, those don't count, you know, but I have been in real situations, a couple, not a lot. Doing it under pressure is scarier. Maybe that's just my personality, okay? Maybe that's just my like maybe because of the fact that I grew up doing dangerous things, that the stress just doesn't bother me of the dangerous things, but like stress of people watching me and me being scored and judged is scarier. That could be, you know. And that brings me to my point. Mike Tyson said that there were guys that could kill him in the gym. And it's like, what are you talking about, man? You're Mike Tyson. No, he said it and he meant it. And the fact was he could do it with people watching. We don't know if Jake Paul could do anything he's doing. We don't even know how good he is anyways, okay? My guess is he's not that great. But we don't know. But if we don't even know how good he is in that sense, then how can we judge how well he'll be with everyone watching? But we do know that Ben Askren can hold up to that pressure. And that's a huge part of it. If Mike Tyson's getting murdered by people in the gym, that's a huge part of it. That's the deciding part of it, if you ask me. That's why I say it boils down to Ben Askren is the better competitor. Period. End of report. There is a difference between going against a guy who wants to be kind of a tough guy in his neighborhood, or might be a basketball player or something, might be a good athlete in a sense, but there's a difference between that and someone who's a lion and will have zero issues legitimately hurting you. There's a difference. There's a big difference. Jake Paul talks about the art of boxing, and he doesn't actually know the art of boxing. That's what I can tell by the way he talks. Because he doesn't talk about the actual art. He doesn't say anything about the art of boxing. He just talks about it. He never says anything that resonates to someone who actually boxed. Maybe if you've boxed for a couple of years, oh yeah, okay, that means a couple of years in you don't get it, man. Okay? I'm not saying I'm a high-level guy. I'm just saying that I grew up around that. Around high-level combat sports people. I grew up around that. And I know when a guy's talking, if he knows what he's talking about. If I put it that way. Maybe I'm not the guy. Okay, I'm not that guy. Okay? But I know those guys. And when you hear them talk about, they can articulate the intangibles a lot better than someone just sitting there talking about the art of boxing. That's it. Ben Askren all the way, but there is unfortunately, I mean, I don't want to say the puncher's chance, you know, but please understand, because when people talk about the puncher's chance, they don't really know what they're talking about. That hasn't happened a lot. I think what I mean by, when I say puncher's chance, I mean by the simple fact that any human gets connected with a decent punch in the chin, goes out from a decently strong guy. The brain does not adapt to better, resist getting knocked out. The brain doesn't do that. So I mean, you get a concussion, you're going to get a concussion. Okay, You get concussed bad enough, you're going out. And Ben Askren's already been knocked out. So unfortunately, there's a physiological disposition now to getting knocked out. And Jake Paul might have had his bell rung too. So I'm not saying that it can't happen to him either. I'm just saying that if Jake Paul wins, mark my words, if Jake Paul wins, one, there's a good chance it was a lucky punch. Because very few people understand the positions that keep you from getting hurt than somebody who's had to take wrestling and use it against strikers successfully. And then two, there is a biological disposition because Ben Askren has been knocked out before. Three, it still doesn't actually mean anything. The problem is if Jake Paul wins, it sends a bad message out there to martial arts. There will be thousands of guys running their mouth about how that happened, which is literally the mentality that turned me off from exploring mixed martial arts as a late teen, young adult. That's that mentality. You're going to have a bunch of dumb people. I didn't want to be around dumb people. And that happened. And it's going to happen again if Jake Paul wins. So people need to remember that it actually doesn't mean he's a better fighter. It doesn't mean anything. Honestly. If Jake Paul wins, he got a lucky punch on a guy who was retired. On a retired fighter who had a biological disposition to maybe getting knocked out. I don't think he'll win with points. I don't think he'll win in decision. I'd be surprised. It could happen, but I would be surprised. Again, I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised because I'm saying it could happen, but I mean, I'm allowing for that possibility because I'm not delusional. But the long and short of it is Ben Askren is a predator human being. And Jake Paul is a prey animal that's trying to compensate. There, I said it. He sees he's running his mouth like somebody who has an ego problem. And ego problems are usually because the people know that they have deficiencies, whatever that is. And they're compensating for that. That's why when people go do real martial arts, that goes away. Because you develop a real competency, which then leads to real confidence. Jake Paul hasn't really done that. Anyways, have a good day, everybody. That's my 2 cents.